Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to go over what drives avoidance away from you. So, folks who have avoidant attachment style. And this can work for either fearful or dismissive. I did want to put a little disclaimer. I had a probably not so good day at work today. I'm fine, nothing happened, but it was just a really rough day. So, I might not be I might be a little distracted, and I'm just making videos kind of to distract myself and just because I like to and I like giving you guys information. But just keep that in mind as we're going through today's video, okay? So the very first one of what could drive an avoidant away from you is actually nothing to do with you. It's actually their own unhealed wounds. And I think a lot of people take this very personally, where they think that this is why an avoidant was driven away from you. And what you tend to do is you internalize it. So you try and find ways to fix it, or you try and find ways to resolve whatever happened. But if it has nothing to do with you, that means you can't solve it. And it might be easier if it was you, right? Sometimes that would make it easier because you can adjust those things. But often, more often than not, I feel it's usually nothing to do with you. And that, I think, can be an interesting truth, whether it's that you can't fix it or you have to wait it out until they resolve it themselves. So I know this is not necessarily fun to hear, but it is true. A lot of times it has nothing to do with you. So that's the first one. The second one is their fear of failure. Now, fear of failure is very common with this attachment style. A lot of individuals, they may feel like they're afraid to fail you, or they're afraid to even accept your love because it makes them feel guilty that, how do I even word it? It makes them feel guilty to accept your love because in turn they almost feel like it makes them have to have pressure to match that standard, to which they're afraid they'll fail if they can't equal up to your measure. So if you're a person who is very attentive or very emotional and caring, all good traits, they may honestly feel that as you show that, their fear of failure increases because they can't match your attentiveness and love and appreciation. And so they actually feel very triggered by that, if that makes sense. And that's not the only way this fear of failure can be triggered. Another thing could be if you mention something about them to which is not up to what you wanted in your own standard or your preference. So, for example, if you want them to be more attentive regardless of how you behave, maybe you want them to answer text messages quicker. They may feel like they want to do that, but they're also too embarrassed to try to see if they fail. So instead, they might just say, no, I don't want to, or this is not what I'm capable of, or this is not what you signed up for, or whatever it is. And so they might push you away because of that, because they actually feel like they wish they could give you what you want. And there's a part of them that really wants to, but they're so intimidated by the possibility of them failing that they avoid it altogether. And in that sense, they avoid you altogether. And so in order for this to heal, it either has to be that the pressure is much slower, which can be frustrating, or you may have to help them to recognize that they do have this fear of failure. And it takes time, it takes rapport, but in general, mentioning to them, even if you can't do it perfectly, it doesn't mean that, I'm going to leave you, or that I'm going to always have this expectation, or I'm going to hang this expectation over your head, right? It's something that over time, you can slowly let them know, I appreciate you doing that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but acknowledging what they do and showing them that it's flexible can really help them, okay? The next one is something that you can probably control more of, which is probably more appreciative on your guys' part, because then you can adjust it and then your partner won't necessarily break off the relationship or become distant. It could be your lack of emotional regulation from their perspective. I'm not saying that that's from your perspective, but from their perspective, they might think if your emotional regulation skills are not up to what they're perceiving, they might feel like it means that they have to do that. They have to adjust your feelings for you or be there for you, to which their fear of failure is now triggering. Their fear of suffocation is now being triggered. And it can make you feel unattended, in the relationship. When you're having the struggle with your emotional regulation, they can't do what you're asking for, and then you might be even more upset, and then it creates a cycle. And avoidant individuals might be very pressured or struggling or intimidated by the emotional demands, rightfully so, possibly, that you have, to which they may feel, okay, this relationship is not necessarily meant for me. And so what can help is if you manage your emotions by yourself to some extent while still allowing them in slowly using some form of interdependence, to which you can even mention, sometimes I know I struggle with emotional regulation, but I'm trying on my end, but I would like to hear what you can, how you can manage your feelings with me, or how we can talk about this together, whatever it may be, if it's like an argument or something like that, to which both of you guys have your own side. Or you can say, I understand that sometimes I say a lot of things and it can be very frustrating or pressuring on you. Let me know what topics you don't want to touch on, because some avoidants, there are certain topics they don't like to hear, along with like a lot of emotional regulation. So it might be, let's say they don't like hearing you talk about your friends or your family who treat you badly or poorly in their mind, because they feel like you're not setting boundaries, and then they feel really helpless about it. And so they might feel more upset about that. Plus, your emotions might be a lot for them to handle, so they might shut down from that. So sometimes what can happen is you can ask them topics which they might feel more uncomfortable with talking about or hearing your side, so you can manage your emotions when it comes to that topic. But maybe other topics they're more comfortable listening to, they can hear you out. So you can kind of manage that. It's up to you guys as a couple, okay? The next one is, the fourth one, is that they're expecting, that you're expecting them to change. Sorry, guys, my head is kind of not here right now. You're expecting them to always change as quick as possible. So it might be that, I don't know, let's say they're pulling away in the bedroom and you feel like that's something you guys should have a conversation about. Rightfully so. In a relationship, you want that. You want them to both individuals to have some sort of understanding of the emotional intimacy as well as the physical intimacy, the needs in that relationship. However, not all the time can it be resolved right away. And so sometimes what you might need to do is not expect that change right away, but rather have a conversation about it, or together say, okay, I'm going to place this on the back burner, but I'm still expecting us to talk about this, or when is a better time for us to talk about it? So instead of expecting change to happen all the time, always expecting change, what you can do is manage those things so it's not as pressuring. Because if you're always expecting it, that's what kind of drives an avoidant away, if that makes sense, okay? And the last one is probably one of the most common ones other than the first one, which is their own personal wound. It is that they might feel like you're never satisfied or happy. And this one actually is a pretty easy fix, which is great, right? Because all you have to do is communicate that you are happy in whichever way. You could say that I appreciate what we do. I'm really grateful for the relationship we have. Just saying that every now and again is more than enough for an avoidant to not have this trigger them to leave the relationship or detach, if that makes sense. So I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.